Hey, be it babe, get ready to have a dose of like excitement, enthusiasm. Like if you are feeling like your vibration is low, it is not going to be low after this interview. I'm definitely so pumped. And I just finished talking with Dai Manuel. He is an incredible human being. He's a trainer. He's been dating his wife for 22 years. He's a father of two amazing daughters who are almost out of the house. And we go through a lot of things about change and like really welcoming change and then also celebrating your wins. And I don't want to keep going because I want you to hear it from his perspective, but it's so fun. It's one of the most fun conversations I've really had. And I really enjoy his like zest and zeal for life. And so you're, you're going to love it too. And also the end, of course, every week I said the be it action items, but seriously, the be it action items, they're so much fun. And I know you're going to just really nerd out with Dai and all he has to say. And then you're probably going to buy his book because I want to read it. It sounds really exciting to me. So anyways, without further ado, well, there's that little ado that happens. And then Dai Manuel.
Welcome to the Be It Till You See It podcast, where we talk about taking messy action, knowing that perfect is boring. I'm Lesley Logan, Pilates instructor and fitness business coach. I've trained thousands of people around the world, and the number one thing I see stopping people from achieving anything is self-doubt. My friends, action brings clarity, and it's the antidote to fear. Each week, my guests will bring bold, executable, intrinsic, and targeted steps that you can use to put yourself first and be it till you see it. It's a practice, not a perfect. Let's get started.
All right, be it babes. I have an amazing guest for us today. Dai Manuel is here. He is from Canada right now, currently, but I think we're going to get into an amazing story of how his life has gone an amazing journey around this world. I'm really excited because I was reading about what he does in this world and how he dates his wife for 22 years. I was just like, anyone who can say they're dating their wife that long, I think we have to have on because I definitely think you're going to inspire all the people listening to maybe date their partners more, or maybe we'll go into some other things. So, Di, can you tell everyone who you are, what you're rocking at these days?
Well, thanks, Lesley. Let's see. Yeah, I'm rocking it out in Vancouver, Canada, and it's a nice place. It's a nice place to call home. It's always been a home base for us, and I'm a dad first and foremost of two teenage girls. Well, they're almost 20 and 18 now. So, as I say, it's karma. And I've been dating my wife. We're going on 23 years.
That's insane.
And yes, I'm very intentional with that language around that. I'm sure we'll unpack that in a bit here. But yes, dating my wife, and I just help people navigate change. I like that. Like we all, I as you can tell, I got some movie posters and stuff behind me. I'm kind of a movie buff, comic book guy. But Indiana Jones, remember Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yes.
You remember the beginning scene where he's got Harrison Ford's barreling down that cave and there's that massive boulder chasing him?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally.
Most of us feel like that boulder is changing our lives and we're running from it, and we're like, yeah, I gotta get out of here. And so I try to flip the script on that and make people be more advocates or champions of change for their own lives, and so because often we feel like victims, we get bowled over and we had nothing to do about it, and it came at us whether we liked it or not, and so that relationship with change is what I really help support people with, and that's me in a nutshell.
That is so cool. That's a beautiful description and a great visual. I loved going to Disneyland, and there's an Indiana Jones ride, and they have that boulder moment. Yes. And when you said that, there's another thing that that I've heard people say, like sometimes you like see a light at the end of the tunnel, but sometimes that light is just a train coming at you.
That's right. Yo, totally. Oh, totally.
And so sometimes and you're kind of like, I feel like people can be like, this again, like, why is this happening to me again? And I think especially, I think 2020 definitely was like, and this happened, all my millennials listening, hello, I'm an elder millennial here. And we're like, then there was 9/11 when we went to college, there was a recession when we got out, then there's COVID when we got back on our feet. And it's like, yes. And I think everyone's generation can pick like all these devastations. So they don't actually have to be these boulders that are following us down the road. How did you get started in helping people like champion change? Like, I don't even know how did that become a job for you?
let me give you the short version, so my first really big change in my life that felt like it was that boulder that ran me over was when I was like 9. and I'm not here to talk about trauma and all that stuff and trauma release. Trust me, I worked with therapists and my psychologist for a bit to work through all that. And I'm a big proponent for that, by the way. But all being said, at 9, my parents, which I thought I lived an idyllic life, and I remember this one day coming home from after school, my dad's like home at like 3 o'clock. And it's like, Dad's never home at 3. Like, what's up? And, they led us into the living room and my mom and dad sat down, on opposite ends of the couch and basically just said, we're getting a divorce, and I'm going to date myself right now. This is back in the mid 80s, I'm like not even 10 yet. But back then, I mean, we don't have the internet. We don't have support groups. We don't have resources that really talk to that aspect of life, because back then, I was in a class of 30 kids and there was only one other kid in that class that didn't have his original parents together still. So, I was definitely a minority situation. And
now people are like, most of the kids' parents are divorced.
It's true. No, it's true. Like it's just, that's a whole nother conversation, obviously, to say like, what's going on? But yeah, it was a bit of a bomb, it was that boulder that ran me over. And at that time, I didn't know how to handle it. I really didn't. And my dad was already working a lot, so he wasn't around a ton. He was just a workaholic, to be honest. But he had lots of enduring and loving qualities. And I know that he loved us, but after, the divorce, it's like, the every other weekend often would turn into once a month or sometimes longer, so just, I didn't have that strong male figure around me, which I can unpack later, because trust me, there's lots of other changes that I wish I didn't happen, but would have been nice if I had some more mentorship in my life. And, but, I sort of spiraled a bit. I figured out how to escape some of the pain that I was feeling and some of that loss and that isolation. And I did it through food. And I also did it through video games and movies, so I was chasing dopamine, I was chasing instant gratification and emotional stress eating, you call it what you will. I did that for about 5 years. And by the time I got to 14, I was at the doctor's office with my mom. The doctor's like, Betty Ann, Dai's morbidly obese. And I'm like, I didn't know what morbid meant, nor did I know what obese meant, but I figured that can't be good, and I knew how I felt inside, anyways, one day I just had sort of a moment, and I won't go into the full gory details, but there was this realization that I was more afraid of not changing than the idea of changing. I was like turning 15, and I was like, gosh, man, life sucks. Everything's hard. And also, kids were mean as in grade school.
They were mean.
They are, but
I was a kid in the 80s too. I mean, they said some mean things.
They were nasty, but what's even worse is like, as I got into high school, I was like, man, teenagers are cruel, like it went from one extreme to another. And I just wasn't enjoying life, and obviously I can talk about the depression and social anxiety and other things that stemmed from that. But I wanted to rise above all that. I didn't want to be where I was anymore. I wanted change. And I had no idea how to get it. But I knew that I didn't want to stay as I was, because I was like, okay, well, it took me 5 years to get to this place of not feeling very good. And if I'm honest with myself, in the next 5 years, by the time I'm 20, if I haven't done anything different, it's not going to be better than it is right now, And so I just came out of the bathroom, like literally after bawling my eyes out, and found my dad in the living room. We were at his place for the weekend that weekend. And I was like, Dad, I don't want to be like this anymore. I want to be healthy. I want to be fit, and also, people also say, what was the motivation? I'm like, I actually wanted a girlfriend, I totally did,
things we'll do for love.
Listen, full disclosure. And I mean, we can unpack that. I really did want to feel that someone saw value in me, that somebody wanted me for me. And obviously as a kid, I couldn't have articulated that way, but in retrospect now, being able to unpack that, 30 years later, I totally get it, and so I set in motion. I went to the library. I got books out on fitness and nutrition, and my kids are still like, why don't you just Google it, Dad? I'm like, I'm older than Google, whoa. So those that are listening, yes, I'm old. But it was cool, right? Like I started to educate myself. But I also took immediate action. I asked my dad, he was like, hey, what do you want to do? He was like, gym membership, and I'm like, hell no, I'm not going in that place. It's all that steel, all those mirrors. And back in the 80s, they were like
mirrors everywhere. Yes.
Like it
Yes.
was, and then those spaghetti strap like tank
Yes, the tank
tops.
tops that don't
Oh,
cover anything, even though they
no.
say they have to cover something. They still do it in West Hollywood gyms because
Oh.
I actually had to work at one, so it's still there. I'm a teenager again. It's the same things, but yes, I think
Yeah.
gyms are very intimidating for
Oh my
most
gosh.
people because
Awful.
of the mirrors and because you have to know what you're doing.
Yes.
And so then what do people do?
Totally.
They just get on the treadmill and they just walk.
That's right. And then you wonder why you come back day after day and they're not seeing the results, right?
Right.
And that's the one thing that's always frustrated me, that I try to support people with not falling into that trap, right? But I get why they fall into it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
especially when we just, gosh, so much misinformation out there, right? So
Oh,
I mean, I get it. People are doing the best that they can with what they got,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I said I like to have a bike. Can we get me a mountain bike? Because
Hmm.
I used to like biking as a kid. That was one activity I knew I used to love doing, and I would do it for hours. I go out in the backyard and I just cycle around, uh, and so he said, sure. And literally that afternoon, we went and got me a bike. And when we got back, I went for a bike ride. I
Yeah.
just went out for a cycle because it was also, I lived in rural Ontario, so just outside of Toronto, a couple hours, and it was literally farm country. It was like all apple orchards and stuff, and so it was very remote.
It's also
But
the 80s, so your kids were allowed to go on a bike
yeah,
ride.
yeah, that's right. But I mean, we were practically like, I think we had 2 traffic lights in the town, right? So I mean, now it's like a booming metropolis of at least 80,000 people,
Yeah.
like, so it's different now 30 years later. But back then, I had the opportunity to just get out, and my dad, and this is really funny. Okay, I'm totally dating myself here. So for those that aren't familiar, Sony used to have a thing called the Walkman. And
Oh
this,
yeah, I didn't even get to have one of those. They were too expensive for my
I didn't
family.
have one. My dad had one. Okay, my
Oh.
dad had one, but he lent it to me. He let me borrow it. And this is the cool thing about the Sony Walkman. You put a tape in there, and it would get to the end of one side, and it would automatically flip to the other for you. You didn't have to take the tape out and flip it. It would do the auto play. So you could literally put a 90-minute tape in there, it would play 45 minutes, and as soon as one side ended, it would start playing the other 45. And this is how I knew when it was time to go back. I would
Oh.
listen one way. I would listen to Tragically Hip, and on the way back, I'd listen to Alice in Chains. And like this is like the one tape that I had, and I would just do it. I know that 45 minutes out. Okay, I'm at the end. I got to turn around and go back now.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and that's what I started doing, and then I just started changing how I fueled myself. And literally, it took about 20 months ish to
Yeah.
release that weight, to get into a healthier lifestyle, healthier mindset. But it took me 5 years to put it on, but less than half of that to take it off. So change can happen pretty quick when
And
you decide
also,
to make it happen,
also what I love is that like you did what you could with what you had, and
Yeah.
also in a way that made you feel safe and feel comfortable.
Yes.
And I also love that like the person that your father was there to go, let's go do that. You want to change it? We're going to
Yes.
change it. And
Oh,
like, I think that like, what a great, for all the parents listening, like he didn't go, well, we'll do it next weekend. Like he said, we're going to
yes.
go do it right now. And I know that like kids want a lot of shit. I don't even know how people are parents now. It sounds very expensive. But when it
Yep.
comes to encouraging things that are actually behaviors that you want, like for them to follow through with a goal that they have, or for them to feel seen and feel confident in their bodies, like those are worthwhile. Like
True.
at least find a way to take action in a moment. It doesn't have to always be buying something. Maybe it's just like,
Yes.
let's look it up. Let's Google where can we go
Yeah.
get this thing before we go and get, there's just like taking that first action is like such, because it's clearly how you got used to like taking action and seeing change
Yes.
and welcoming it. Whereas other people, where if it's like, oh, well, maybe we'll do that another time. No, we can't do that right now. If you don't encourage that next step of action, then people just become pretty like complacent and okay, well, I'll just do it someday. It'll be someday.
And full disclosure, my parents, over that 5 years, they obviously saw that I was hurting. They saw the sadness, they saw the withdrawal. Like they just saw that I isolated a lot, right? Like I wasn't a very outgoing child a lot of the times, and I would avoid really big social situations, especially with people I didn't know, because I felt so subconscious, right?
Yeah.
Like self-conscious
Yeah.
and just low self-esteem. Like it just all the usual cliches or stigmas that we attach to someone in that state of unhealth. Trust me, that's just what I was living. But they would often come to me and they would offer different strategies and things to help me. But you have to understand, they were coming to me and offering these ideas, like my mom would be like, I've got a good friend that's a nutritionist. We can have you sit down with her, and I remember my dad like, hey, why don't we get you into karate classes, or my mom at one point was like, well, you can get you a personal trainer, and this is like when personal trainer is kind of a new thing, right? Like, wow,
Right.
your own trainer. And, but here's the thing. Every time they came to me and they made that offer, I was like, you think I'm not good enough the way I am?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought. Like, now I know that wasn't their intention, but I took it as like someone's trying to force change on me.
Yeah.
And I would act out accordingly. I would not be very nice. But this is where the thing switched when all of a sudden I came to my dad, and I'm like, Dad, I want this. I want to do this shit. And I think he saw it in my eyes and like, okay, we got to strike this while it's hot. Like,
Yeah.
let's do
Yeah.
it. And I think that's the thing we have to remember, that we, especially as parents, and this is something my wife Kristen and I've tried to take note of with our own kids. Like, of course, we try to encourage good behaviors. We try to catch them doing things right, and make a point of applauding that. But also, we do know better because we have life experience,
Right.
but when we see them doing things really well, we do want to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And be present for that. And because if you're constantly reinforcing the good habit and behaviors, they actually start to realize, wow, this is good. This makes me feel good, And so, yeah, anyway.
Absolutely. I just love that. Catch them doing things right. I think that
Mhm.
so often people are so worried about what they're doing that's wrong that
Yeah.
they're only looking for what's wrong, right? Like our brain is like looking for like the reticulating activating whatever RES is like
Yeah.
looking for evidence that your kid could be hurting themselves. So you're like only seeing that when like if you actually can really encourage the good behaviors, people definitely want to feel seen. So they're whether this is your kids or if you're like me, I don't have kids, coworkers, partners, friends in your life, like compliment the things that they're doing that you want them to keep doing
Yes.
and they'll keep
Yes.
doing them. It's like a
It's
pet.
wild.
If I like have a positive voice, my dog does good things. If I have a negative voice, it's the same way.
We have a cat, and the cat just looks at me and he's like, F you. Like
Well,
cats have attitudes, man. They
cats
don't
have
care.
attitudes.
I don't get it. That's one of the one thing I love about dogs. You talk to them nice, they treat you well, like
They
it's great.
do.
Talk to
They
a cat
do.
nice, they just look at you like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Like it's just
Yeah.
straight up.
Yeah,
Good point.
there's so many comedy shows about like dogs versus cats and like I have friends my mom has two cats and we have friends who've got cats and like love them but they're like when you're having a bad day the cat's not like oh let me take care of you. My dog if I'm having a bad day he's like oh you want to lay in bed with me, this is great, okay.
And they give you that unconditional love where I don't feel that for my cat. I
No,
really don't. I'm
no.
like, yeah, anyways, they're cats,
Anyways,
right?
that's a side note. Sorry
Yep.
to, but if you love your cats and you have a different opinion, you can keep it. Great, that's wonderful. Go ahead and
It
keep it.
is. I'm
I don't
like,
need.
teach my
Uh,
cat, please.
yeah.
Like
So okay,
uh,
so I love this. Like you had this like moment of like taking in change for yourself, and I think that this is key because whether or not you were 15 or like anytime in our lives, there are these moments where we are you said it, you're like you are more scared to not change than
that's
for
right.
the change. And I think sometimes we end up waiting until it gets that bad before we like
Mhm.
take action. Have you noticed in your life since then or with the coaching that you do that like is it possible to make to change before you get hit rock bottom or do we have to hit the rock bottom to make the change?
Well, as I always say, sometimes you get to rock bottom, you realize there's a rock there that you can crawl under. So, like, and well, I've been there. So the rock bottom is definitely subjective. But we can learn to adapt more quickly. Um, but you're right. You sort of hinted at the reticular activation system, but more importantly, this thing called confirmation bias.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really unique, is like when we're feeling positive and we're looking for positive, especially affirmations or confirmations, we have a tendency to find it. It's like we want to find the successful stuff, but equally, if we're looking for bad stuff, we're just as good at finding that too to confirm our position or beliefs. And
Yeah.
this is just psychology, and we all got to deal with it, unfortunately. And so that mental health piece is so critical. in any sort of well-being conversation, that's sort of where everything starts, because it's our self-perspective, right? It's that, as Maslow always says, he talks about this hierarchy of needs, and
Yep.
you got all these basic pieces on the bottom about feeling safe, having a roof over your head, food in your belly, quality relationships. But at the very peak, there's this elusive thing called self-actualization. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? But it's that idea of aligning our vision, our purpose, our integrity, those passions, like that, all the things that really make us uniquely us, and having them going one direction, so,
Yeah.
and feeling good about that. And it's not easy to tap into that, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't look for it, and so change, though, is very much a proactive thing, like when you want to make change, we're pretty lucky. I mean, there's podcasts like yours, Lesley. There's amazing TED Talks. The amount of books and literature that is out there that talks about ways to empower ourselves for change. It's just a matter of going and tapping into it.
Thank you for this. Is such a now that there is a Google, and
but like, thank you, Mr. Google.
That's you make it so true. Like, if there is a change you want to make, you can make it at any time. We tell the businesses we coach, like, if you don't have your website up at 11 p.m. when somebody is like at their bottom, like, I'm ready for this change, and they're Googling a solution to the problem that they have, and if you don't have a website, they're not going to find you. They're going to find someone. They're going to find a solution that they think is going to work, but you might be the best one. So you have to be on that line. And so what's so cool about Google is, like, any one of us can go, you know what I really want to learn right now? I need a change. I need this. You can join a gym online. You can find therapy online. You can like join a new club. I'm like, oh, I want to take this class. I already found a place down the street, signed up on Saturday. They don't even know who I am or how I found them. Like, we have right now is like the best time to live, because if you want to make a change, you can make it within a minute.
That's right. Absolutely. It's literally like flipping a switch. Now, sustaining change is where the problems happen.
Yes. So how do we do that?
Well,
because it's really easy in the beginning, like this, because I think people rely on motivation, and motivation only gets you started. It doesn't actually show up. It's a fickle friend.
It really is. Well, it's a depleting resource, and it depletes every day. We start in the morning. For sure, we feel great. We feel motivated. We feel excited about the prospect of the day ahead. And I mean, if you're not a morning person, maybe it comes later. But regardless, we have this sort of amount of energy that we start with, and focus, and it does deplete. And the more taxing are the things that we're trying to do, the more uphill we feel like we're going, it depletes more quickly. And there's books out there. There's one that I always love called Eat the Frog, great. Remember
book.
that? The whole idea was, the premise of the book. I mean, you don't even have to read it. Here's the premise, right? Like, if the hardest thing that you had to do in a day was eat a frog, the idea is, do that first, because then you got the rest of the day to do the things that actually won't require as much energy or focus or in particular motivation to do. And also you feel really accomplished because you got the hardest thing done first. The rest of the day might feel easier. And so we have to remember that, especially, and I work with a lot of people in the fitness and the wellness space, because I've been doing it for like 28 years, so I tend to have a lot of people that want to make changes physically, emotionally, spiritually, also psychologically, and everything's tapped in, right? But the physical is an easy one to tap into first, it's just moving our body a bit more. And it takes consistency and frequency, but for some people, it's really hard to get started because they've been at rest for so long, and we know, based on physics, like the most amount of energy it's going to take to move a body at rest is that initial inertia to get it started.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. So, one of the girls I follow, she's like some CrossFit champion, and she was like pulling a car. So like a rope, and she's pulling a car. And I was like, oh my God. And my dad goes, it's actually just really hard to get it started. Once she gets it started, it's not that hard. And I was like, don't take away her win, but that's also very good information.
But it's true. But that's exactly how it works. Like with almost any sort of change that we come up against, it's the initial first few steps to actually take those initial actions will be the most challenging moments. It's going to take the most amount of energy, the most amount of motivation. But the cool part is, as soon as we start seeing results in the direction that we want to see them, it's self-fulfilling. You start to feel like this motivation starts filling up again a little bit more readily, or quickly. Like you just, it's nice, because I can honestly speak to this, because I remember making that change at 15, and it was within the first, I'd say about 6 weeks, I had a really big physical win. I remember I'd ride this bike, for like 90 minutes, right? And I was doing it at least 5 times a week, just getting out for these rides. It wasn't like super intense. I'm not like a motocross kind of guy or anything, right? I was an obese kid on a mountain bike. But there was this hill and it felt like a mountain. All right. It felt like an Everest to me. Like, I mean, it could have been a molehill, but it still felt like this Everest. And I remember the first time coming to it, I made it barely a third of the way up. And like the bike, like literally just stopped. Like I'm pedaling, I'm trying to move it, and it just like stopped. There's like done. And I got off the bike, and I had a moment there where I was like, well, I failed. I might as well just turn around and go home. This is dumb. I can't do this. But I knew that was like, I don't want that. I don't want that. I want this. I want to make some health changes. So I walked the bike to the top and I continued on my way. Now, I didn't deviate from this route. Okay. I kept doing this route for these 6 weeks. And every time I'd come to that hill a little bit more. By the end of 6 weeks, I just remember coming to it this one day and I kept my head down. I just kept going. I felt like that little train that can, right? I think I can. And all of a sudden it got easy again. And I looked up and I'm like, holy crap. I'm on the top of this mountain. I did this. And 6 weeks ago, I couldn't do this. And I was like, hello. Change is happening, and it's happening because I'm making it happen, and that was the moment for me. That was it,
And you also, like, something to point out here for my perfectionists and overachievers listening is he celebrated the win. Like there was like, I did it. And I don't think that we all, maybe as kids we do it, but once we get older and become more of adult, we actually get to the top of the hill and we're just like, I didn't get there fast enough. No one was there to help me. Like we look for all these, we'd look for ways to take the win away, or we just move on to the next hill without even reflecting on what it is that we did.
You know what? Okay. And I say this all the time. I wrote a book like a few years ago and in it, I maintain that Nike's got it all wrong. Okay. So here's some clickbait, right? Like, what are you saying? I mean, Nike, one of the most well-recognized brands globally, right? Just do it. I mean, it's very motivating, but here's the thing. Why not say just did it? Like, why can't we celebrate the act of completing what it is that we set out to do? Because that's actually where all that self-efficacy comes from, that ability to tap in and say, holy crap, I did it. I'm like much more of that mentality. I'm like, adopt not a just do it, but a just did it mentality. Focus on the results that are created and the feeling you achieve by completing the thing that you set out to do.
I love this.
It's awesome though, right?
This is so good. Oh my gosh, they did. Gotta say, oh, y'all, I mean, I'm sure you already have this. Like you have adjusted it hashtag like that. You need you need adjusted it sticker. People need
and it's a check mark, not a swoosh, right? Like, so way you go,
this is cool. So what are some ways that you have helped people like either welcome the change and also like, what do you have them do once they've like done it? Like, what is theirs? You have them do the just did it. Like, what are the other ways that you have them celebrate so they can like keep it going? Cause it's like, it's the momentum of once you keep going, like it's easier to keep going. Right.
That's right. I love the acronym SMART, right? Like it makes sense. Specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time-based goal setting, right? Because we have these big lofty goals and I think we should. As human beings, we have this natural ability in us to strive to be greater than we are. We do. We just have this in us. It's in our DNA. And the cool thing is there's gonna be a lot of hard stuff. And I mean, that's just living a life. You're going to encounter hard stuff. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and it's coming like the boulder, right? Like it's coming at us. It doesn't matter what, but there's this cool little thing called resiliency. And my climate change friends are like, yeah, humanity is way too resilient, and fair enough. We populated this planet and we overconsume. Sure, we can go down that path, but look at some of the conditions that we've overcome, the suffering that we've overcome. And yet there's like 8 billion of us on this planet. Like that's impressive. I mean, yes, it's evolution, but it's because we are resilient in our DNA. And I think when we really accept that, we also accept something that Buddha said like 2,600 years ago, which is taking science a little time to catch up at, but they have proved this now, that nothing in our entire known universe is permanent. Everything's in a flux, right? Everything's changing, always changing. So it's like, okay, we're resilient and change is a given. all right, let's figure out how to navigate change and be a bit more resilient, tap into this DNA that's allowed us to do this. And I think it's just a matter of trying to do hard stuff. I don't care. And, for me, it was like that little hill, which wasn't very big, by the way. But for me at that time, at my level of fitness and where I was at, it was an Everest. But every time I came at it, I was just a little bit better than the day before.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. We're not talking about massive 100% improvement here. Unless you're trying to do a pull-up for the first time, by the way. If you go from doing 0 pull-ups to doing 1 pull-up, it's the only time in your fitness career you'll be able to say, I had 100% improvement, okay? And then after that, it's diminishing returns. But regardless, that one time, it was like, that's 100% better than I was yesterday. But other than that, it's just find the thing and then figure out the little intervals and celebrate those wins, as you said before, Lesley. Like break it down and celebrate the little victories along the way.
Yeah.
Because you just did it. Like, hello. Like, well, that's in itself self-fulfilling,
I love that you said, like, doing some hard things. I think that we avoid them. And so then anytime a hard thing happens, well, people say to us, but it's happening for them in some way. Like, it's almost like, it like hits you like a cold shower. It's like, what is this thing that's hard thing that I have to do? It's like, but if you're accustomed to doing hard things often of your choosing, it makes it a little easier to take on the hard things. You're like, oh, this is just, I got to do this now.
And you have that self-belief, right? It's like, I can do this. I've done other hard stuff, and to be fair, it was nice that I'd learned that lesson early on. It wasn't until in my early 30s I realized that, I had actually exchanged sort of the food escapism with alcohol escapism, alcohol, and which would often lead to some narcotic use as well. And I had a very poor relationship with alcohol, and then in my early 30s, I came to sort of this halt again, this moment where I was like, I don't want to be like this anymore. And it was because my wife, actually, we were looking at going our separate ways. She's like, this is not a healthy environment to raise our kids in. They're both under the age of 6 at this time. And we'd been together for almost a decade. And yet I'd had this perpetuating habit, because I still often thought of myself as that morbidly obese fat kid, because I didn't actually do any of the internal work at that point. I just focused on the external. And it eventually came to a halt where my whole life was being turned upside down because I was valuing alcohol over everything else that I had. And she sat me down this one day and she's like, okay, we're done. We're both bawling our eyes out. We're trying to figure out, well, how are we going to co-parent, because we both loved each other still. Like, we didn't really want that, and she's like, looks at me and she says, Dai, are you being the type of man that you would want to marry your daughters? And I'll tell you, Lesley, that question, it was like, I got kicked between the legs and punched in the nose at the same time. Like, holy smoke. Because it was instantaneous where I was like, hell no. If someone like me at that moment in my life at 33 years old showed up on my doorstep, I'd be like, get the hell out of here. But that's what I was mentoring and modeling to my closest relations, and so it was in that moment I made a commitment to go 1 year without drinking. And a lot of people are like, oh, a year, what are you talking about? That's not that long. And I'm like, hey, the longest I'd ever done is like a dry January. Okay. And those like 15 years, that was the longest I'd ever done. And so I committed to that year. And I realized in the first like 6 weeks, this is going to be a hell of a hard thing to do, and that's when I broke down with my wife and I got really vulnerable with her for the very first time in our relationship after 10 years. I finally opened up and actually poured everything out. And she's like, you know what? Thank you. I think you need some help. She was like, I'm just being honest. Like, she was like, okay, yes. Thank you for, entrusting me to share this, but I don't know what to do with this, and to be fair, I didn't expect her to know what to do. I needed to share. And then I found help, found a psychologist, found a therapist, I did the work. Like, I went all in on the work for 6 months. And after that 6 months, everything shifted for me. And we got to the end of the year, and I'm just going to end the story here. We got to the end of the year because people probably wonder, well, what happened at the end of the year? Well, my wife's looking at me. She's like, holy crap, you did it. Like, you just did it, like you did a whole year. And I to be fair, like, she didn't think I could. And I'm being honest, like, if I'm honest, I at periods didn't think I could. And I was like, well, you did it. Do you want to celebrate? Let's watch the sun go down tonight and share a bottle of wine. And I'm like, that sounded really nice. But then I started thinking, I was like, so much in my life has changed in these last 12 months, like so much.
Yeah.
What if I keep going? Anyways, I just celebrated 14 years. 14 years, like,
Wow, that's amazing.
isn't that crazy? Like,
That's great, but
yeah.
it's also amazing because like you figured out, well, first of all, you had someone put in front of a mirror in front of you, like,
Oh, yeah.
this is not like, do you really want to be like this? Do you want to be this person? Because this is what your kids are seeing is like a man, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
then
right.
and then you challenge yourself and then you found out like that doesn't work for you. And like you've gone all in it. I think sometimes people doubt that. I think sometimes people, do the dry January and they're like, oh, I feel so good. Or they do a sugar detox, and then they, or whatever. And then they just go back.
That's
And
right.
so, which some things y'all like your body does need a little bit of sugar. Like don't fucking remove a whole thing without talking to your doctor and making sure it works for you. But like you don't need to villainize something.
That's right. No, you're
But like,
right. You're right.
but like oftentimes people don't realize, I have someone in my life is like, oh, whenever I have dairy, like I break out. I'm like, so why do you keep having it? Like, what are you doing? But I think sometimes it's too hard to keep going. But if we actually just celebrate that, like this actually worked for me, I did this and I feel really good. So what if I just keep going and give yourself that permission to continue to find out what that change is? So I imagine that is what like spurred the dating the wife. And so you've been dating
Oh, yeah.
your wife this whole time. And that is got to be really fun and interesting, but also like how cool for your kids to see that. Cause now they're gonna have high standards for the partners in their life.
Well, and to be honest, this last week we moved my 20-year-old, or soon to be 20-year-old, in with her boyfriend, and I'm still processing, to be fair. But it was, they've been together almost 3 years, so a long time, and they're just very mature, and just it's been really cool to just sort of experience this and support them with this. But at the same time, it's like, wow. Like, wow, but that's the thing, we modeled and mentored, because the two most effective ways every single one of us on this planet learn is through mentorship and modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so you do have to look in the mirror and say, well, what am I mentoring and what am I modeling? And also who's mentoring me, and then what am I modeling to those that are closest to me? But also, we think about how we show up for our work, and to our communities. And, do we have that integrity to do the things that we, say what we're going to do and do what we say? And to be fair, there's been lots of periods in my life where I haven't felt integral. And that feeling sucks. Like
I think it totally sucks. And I also think that a lot of people listening, you can maybe even right now are like out of integrity. And that is, if you don't own it, you're just going to get more and more pissed at a lot of things. And it's really like that you're just out of alignment for what is like integral for you. And it's not fun, but that's good change to like make in your life. That's a great place to start making change.
Perfect place to start. Perfect place. Because it all it takes is a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it takes is one day. Like I always joke with people, but I'm like, I know I'm only ever one workout away from feeling better than I am when I'm not feeling in a good place. Like I just, those are good endorphins I get from just getting a little sweat on, even just going out for a quick 30-minute walk outdoors. Like instantly my mood shifts, my mental health shifts.
Oh,
instantly.
So, over this, normally when we're on a holiday trip, we go on a tour around the whole country, the US, everyone. And normally the weather is fine enough for me to walk the dogs every day. I can actually get a little workout in. It's not my normal workout. It's not my normal morning routine because I'm not in my home, but like I can do a mini version of it. Yeah. And I really am like so proud of that. I coach people on that. I feel so good. Well, this particular Christmas was like worst weather ever. So cold. The dogs didn't even want to be outside, like it was just miserable. And by the time we got home, I just remember going, like, I just don't even feel like myself anymore. And I was like, just go do the thing. So I like sat in front of my red light. I took the dogs for a long walk. All of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, like it's so crazy. Like when you're out of integrity, out of alignment with yourself, it can feel like, why is this happening? But it's like, oh, just go. Like, what are the tools that you have used to make yourself feel good? And boom, you're like right there again. So yeah, it can be a workout. It can be spending time by yourself. You could be reading a book. There's just, you have to know the tools that make you feel good so that you can use them when you don't feel good.
Oh, and to add to everything you just said, because that's all. I'm like, drop the mic. Well, don't drop it. It looks expensive, but you know what I mean. Like, there's that was so well said. But here's the thing: ask yourself, what are the things that I would never regret doing? And here's the thing, right? Like, I've never had a client mess with me and say, you asked me to eat that big healthy salad with like some cedar plank salmon on it for lunch today. Well, Dai, I really regret doing that. Like I've never received that message. I've never had someone message me, the workout you programmed for me today. Yeah, I really regret doing that. Like, no, there's certain things that we do for ourselves we'll never regret doing. So just do more of that, and remember that feeling that you get by completing that and celebrate that and realize that was on you. You made that happen. You just did that. Like, good on you, good on you. So.
That is awesome. I love this. Okay. Well, we could clearly keep going forever, but we got to wrap this up because our people's commutes are probably ending. So we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to find out where people can find you, follow you, learn more from you, and your beit action items. All right, Dai. So where can people find you, work with you? Where do you like to hang out? Is it socials? Do you have anything that they can download, learn from?
Well, I'm most active on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And I've been trying that TikTok thingy, but not super consistent or whatnot. My kids, they're definitely trying to help. But the cool thing about having a unique name, thank you, mom and dad. This is all pre-SEO, but now I'm like, I get it. They were visionaries, but Dai's a Welsh name for David, D-A-I. Manuel is Portuguese, so M-A-N-U-E-L. You put those two together, you got me, and you added a .com on the end of it, you'll find my website. Okay, so
perfect.
I'm really easy to find. Shoot me a message. I love just having conversations and hearing about, triumphant changes that people are achieving. And believe me, it doesn't matter how small or how huge, it's all triumphant. Okay, it all is. It's all relative because the way you do anything is the way you do everything, as they say. So you achieve one little triumph, trust me, you can achieve big triumphs too. And that's it. I'm not here to pitch anything other than say, geez, if you're not living your best life, you got room to improve on. Get at it.
Oh my goodness, I love that so much, Dai. Okay, before I let you go, bold, executable, intrinsic target steps people can take to be it till they see it. What do you have for us?
Okay, this is the simplest thing I can give people. After being in the fitness industry for 20 years, you can imagine I've heard a whole lot of excuses. Okay, I've heard a lot. I mean, like everything. You could throw it at me, I've probably heard it. Now, here's the thing. We've all got 30 minutes a day. All right, I know there's people thinking, I don't have 30 minutes a day. I'm like, you know what? Give me your smartphone. We're going to go into the settings, and you're going to look at the thing called screen time. Okay, I know you got 30 minutes now. Like, don't tell me you don't. Now, here's the thing. That's only 2% of every 24 hours. So what I want you to do is make a commitment to yourself that you're going to commit 28 days straight. That's 4 weeks, where you're going to make non-negotiable every day 30 minutes for yourself. And in this 30 minutes, you're going to do something very specific. You're going to move your body with purpose for 15 minutes. Okay, you're just going to move it. I don't care how you move it. Just move it any way you want. As I always say, always. Okay, like move your body for 15 minutes, get your heart rate elevated, feel into your body so like you did something good. Then you're going to immediately follow that with 5 minutes of mindful meditation. All right, now that's 20 minutes. Now for the last 10 minutes, you're going to feed that muscle between the ears, okay, that brain of yours with something positive. Intentional, focused, personal development, not professional development, personal development. Okay. We all get lots of professional development, but I want you to work on yourself personally. So you can listen to a podcast like Lesley's, you can listen to a TED Talk. By the way, I did a TEDx talk a year ago on vulnerability in men. So,
that's so
there's
cool.
a little plug there. Self plug. Sorry.
I love it.
Also, whatever it is, but feed your mind something positive for 10 minutes. And you'll find that after exercising that mindfulness meditation, you're ready to receive and you become a sponge. But that's just 2% of your 24 hours. Okay. And in that, if you commit to that for 4 weeks, I've never had anybody come up to me and say, I didn't experience a big shift. I know you will. Body, mind, and spirit, you'll shift. And in case you're wondering, the Whole Life Fitness Manifest is the name of the book where I shared the whole protocol for that. So I guess there was book? one little plug. Okay.
That's your book, The Whole
That's my
Life?
book, The Whole Life Fitness Manifesto. Teaches
Perfect.
you how to maximize 2% of every 24 hours to see improvements in body, mind, and spirit.
I love it. We'll put the links all in the show notes, y'all.
Cool. Thank
Okay,
you.
I expect everybody listening in the next 28 days to be tagging Dai and myself and letting us know your big shift. I mean, I'm instant gratification kind of person. So like maybe somewhere along the first few days, let us know how it's going. Just so I can hold you accountable.
Love it. Love it.
Dai, this has been a wonderful conversation. I feel like I have a dose of energy for your enthusiasm for life. So thank you so much for sharing everything about you, your journey, how you got here, and sharing that with us so we can learn from it. And also, y'all, 2% of your day to be it till you see it. I can't think of a better way, right? So thank you so much. And until next time, we'll see you soon.
That's all I got for this episode of the Be It Till You See It podcast. One thing that would help both myself and future listeners is for you to rate the show and leave a review. And follow or subscribe for free wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, make sure to introduce yourself over at the Be It Pod on Instagram. I would love to know more about you. Share this episode with whoever you think needs to hear it. Help us and others be it till you see it. Have an awesome day.
Be It Till You See It is a production of As the Crows Fly Media.
It's written, produced, filmed, and recorded by your host, Lesley Logan, and me, Brad Crowell. Our associate producer is Amanda Fraterelli.
Kevin Perez at Disenyo handles all of our audio editing.
Our theme music is by Ali at Apex Production Music, and our branding by designer and artist Gianfranco Cioffi.
Special thanks to our designer Jairo Mandal for creating all of our visuals, which you can't see because this is a podcast, and our digital producer Jay Pedroso for editing all the video each week so you can.
And to Angelina Herrico for transcribing each of our episodes so you can find them on our website. And finally, to Meredith Crowell for keeping us all on point and on time.